Hey y'all, Gramma Rose here. It's about time for me to do this again. Oh dear. I have been putting off doing this video for a while because it bothered me. And I was afraid it was going to bother you too. And I thought, finally, I don't know what it is. I've been reading these and listening to these videos, watching videos and listening to people for the past month now talk about how the government is telling us that we need to prepare, that we need to be prepared for a power outage. Yeah, we do. We do need to be prepared. We all need to be preppers. But is that what the paper said? Now, the first time I heard this, the first thing I did was I downloaded the paper. I went online and I found the paper and I downloaded it to my computer so I could read it. Now let me tell you what this is. This latest thing that I saw today that finally prompted me to do this video was another video that was put out earlier in the month. And what it says underneath it is that the DHS, what does it say? The DHS is warning Americans to prepare. That's okay. Well, number one, it's not the DHS. Okay. I wonder, have you read the paper? Now, I would not have even done this if Canadian Prepper hadn't put out a video this past week saying what I've been thinking. And what I've been thinking is, wait a minute, is that what's really been said? I didn't see that. I didn't read that. What am I missing? Well, I thought if I'm missing something, I don't want to say anything. Because if I'm missing it, I don't want somebody to come back at me and say, wait, you didn't read this. Look on page so-and-so and so-and-so. Here's exactly what they're saying. So, I didn't say anything because I felt silly. I felt stupid. And I didn't want to say anything that was going to make me look even sillier or even more stupid. So I didn't say anything. Now, Canadian Prepper came out with a video just the other day. And he was reading into it the same thing that I was reading into it. And so I felt vindicated. And yeah, I finally felt vindicated. I'm like, well, maybe I wasn't being so silly after all. So let me tell you what this is. Now you can go on the computer and all you have to do is look at, you probably could Google just about anything and come up with the paper. But let me tell you what the committee was that made this report, that wrote this report, and why it was written. Okay, this was the NIAC, which is the President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council. Now, what is this? Okay, this is a committee that was set up, or an advisory council that was set up in October of 2001. So that was 1 month after 9/11. And that's when the country decided that we needed to be prepared for another attack. We had been attacked, and what did we need to do to be prepared for an attack? Now, we have disaster preparedness guidelines already set up. We have guidelines on what to do if there's a weather emergency. We have guidelines on what to do if there's an earthquake. We have guidelines on what to do if there's a flood. And all of these things are in place in case we have that kind of emergency. But we don't have any guidelines on what to do if there is some kind of a grid-down situation. And it doesn't say what the cause of the situation is, but what the consequences of the situation would be, and what does the country need to do to prepare for that. That's what this report is. This report is not saying we are under imminent danger of attack. We're not getting ready to be attacked by an EMP. We're not getting ready to have a grid-down situation. But what it's saying is, what if this should happen? What should the country be doing now to be prepared in case that situation came up? And that's what this is. The name of the report is Surviving a Catastrophic Power Outage. How to Strengthen the Capabilities of the Nation. Okay, that's the title of the paper. I searched for the word food. Food came up 8 times. Stockpile came up 1 time. Prepare came up 114 times. It is telling people we need to prepare. That goes without saying. This is about preparedness. First of all, it tells about the NIAC, the National Infrastructure Advisory Council, and what it is. Okay, like I said before, it was this council was established in 2001, and it's made up of senior executives of both the private industry and government, local, national government, state, local government. Okay, so let me read you a little bit more about this committee. It says, at the President's request, the NIAC members conduct in-depth studies on physical and cyber risks to critical infrastructure and recommend solutions that reduce risks and improve security and resilience. Members draw upon their deep experience, engage national experts, and conduct extensive research to discern the key insights that lead to practical federal solutions to complex problems. The President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council was tasked to examine the nation's ability to respond to and recover from a catastrophic power outage of a magnitude beyond a modern experience, exceeding prior events in severity, scale, duration, and consequence. Simply put, how can the nation best prepare for and recover from a catastrophic power outage regardless of the cause? So what this is a what-if scenario. What would happen? How would we survive this? What do we need to do to be prepared? So this committee was tasked with answering those questions. So they said they interviewed dozens of senior leaders and experts, and they came up with conclusions. And so let's get to that. What does it say? What does it say we should do? Recommendations. The United States should respond to this problem in 2 overarching ways. 1. Design a national approach to prepare for, respond to, and recover from catastrophic power outages that provides the federal guidance, resources, and incentives needed to take action across all levels of government and industry and down to communities and individuals. That's important, down to communities and individuals. To improve our understanding of how cascading failures across critical infrastructure will affect restoration and survival. It says there are a number of ongoing initiatives in both the public and private sector that are in line with our recommendations. We urge the continued advancement of these initiatives in conjunction with our recommendations. So that's what this paper is about. It's a recommendation to the government and to people, too, what we need to do to be prepared. This isn't saying that this is going to happen right now. This is saying what we need to do to be prepared. That's what preppers are doing. That's what preppers have been doing. We're ahead of the game. So in the introduction, it talks about how we're already prepared, the things that we're already prepared for. And then it goes on to say, a risk posed by a catastrophic power outage, however, is not simply a bigger, stronger storm. It's something that could paralyze entire regions, with grave implications to the nation's economic and social well-being. The NIAC was challenged to think beyond even our most severe power disruptions, imagining an outage that stretches beyond days and weeks to months or years, and affects large swaths of the country. Unlike severe weather disasters, a catastrophic power outage may occur with little or no notice. We know in advance what's going to happen. We know weeks in advance, or at least a good full week in advance of a hurricane coming. Those of us who live in Tornado Alley know 15 minutes maybe. In fact, we got a tornado warning this past weekend. Saturday morning, my community was under a tornado warning. Not a watch, but a warning. We had to shelter. I was in our hall. My family, my daughter and granddaughter were visiting me, and we huddled in my hall for 30 minutes, waiting for the warning to go away. And it was finally lifted, and we were able to go back out again. But we were under a watch for the rest of the day. That was scary, waiting for that tornado to come, and then thank goodness it didn't come. But we had warning. We had 15 minutes warning. We could have gotten in the car if we wanted to, and driven in the opposite direction to avoid it altogether. It was early morning. It was about 6 o'clock in the morning, and we weren't dressed, and we just huddled in the hall. So this kind of thing, a power outage like this would come without warning. We wouldn't know what was going to happen. Have you read that this says we should prep for 6 months? I didn't see that. Maybe I missed it. I could have missed it. I might have. I saw 2 weeks. I'll get to that in a minute. So I think what we have here are a bunch of alarmists. And it's okay to be prepared. It's okay to be told that we need to prepare. We know that. We know we need to prepare. Now, I don't consider myself to be what you would call a, quote, doomsday prepper. I am a prepper. And I think we all should be preppers. We all should be prepared for any eventuality. I lived in Memphis I grew up in Memphis and then lived there another little more than 10 years. And Memphis is on the New Madrid Fault. So anyone who lives along the Mississippi needs to be prepared in case of an earthquake. So that is just part of what we did. We knew that we had to be ready in case an earthquake could happen. We probably wouldn't have any kind of warning. That's like living on the San Andreas Fault out in California. I might as well have lived in California on the San Andreas Fault, but no, I lived on the New Madrid Fault, which is just as bad, if not worse. Heard the stories about when the fault, when the last earthquake was happened in the 1800s, and I don't remember exactly when in the 1800s, but it caused deep gullies, deep fissures in the earth, and created Reelfoot Lake, which is in North Tennessee, northwest Tennessee, along the Mississippi River in North Tennessee. And they said that when the quake happened, the Mississippi River flowed backwards, and bells rang in Boston. And that's true. That's true. That is how bad that earthquake was. Bells rang in Boston, long way from New Madrid, Missouri. New Madrid is in the Boot Hill of Missouri, which is not that far from Memphis. So Memphis would probably be devastated if that earthquake were to happen again, and it is overdue to happen again. Yes, we do need to prepare. People along the Gulf Coast, along the well, not just the Gulf Coast, along the Atlantic coast, along the Pacific coast, need to be prepared for weather. Well, we all need to be prepared for weather. But people along the coasts, plural, need to be prepared for hurricanes. Hurricanes are terrible. I mean, look what happened, Hurricane Katrina. We know what happened in New Orleans. Look what happened in Harvey to Houston. Look what happened in this past fall along the Florida coast. Was it Mexico Beach that was totally wiped off the map practically? Was it totally practically? That doesn't make sense. I remember Hurricane Camille, which wiped away a lot of the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Went down there, and all we saw were just the concrete where buildings used to be. Yeah, just concrete pads where buildings used to exist, and there was nothing there. Hurricanes are terrible. Tornadoes are terrible. All kinds of things that can happen. The winter storms, blizzards, all kinds of things that we need to be prepared for. There's nothing crazy about being prepared. And if somebody says they're a prepper, that doesn't automatically make them a wacko. We need to. But is FEMA, is the Department of Homeland Security telling us that we need to be prepared for imminent attack? We need to be prepared for 6 months. I don't know. That's what I've been looking up and trying to find where it says it. Well, we know that if there were an EMP, or if there was a solar flare, or something that caused our power to go out and our grid to go down, if it blew out all the transformers and blew out everything, that it's going to be a lot more than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is being, I don't know what the 2 weeks means, but we know that we need to be prepared for more than that. So I'm not being a wacko by saying we need to be prepared for more than that, because that just is, it's common sense to know that it's going to take longer to completely repair the electric grid. 2 weeks isn't going to do it. Back, oh gosh, how many years ago, Ben? 15 years ago maybe? I can't remember exactly when, in Memphis. Now, we've all had disasters happen. Danny King talks about what happened to him when Katrina hit that area of the U.S. I lived in Memphis, and in the early 2000s, don't remember the exact year, sometime between 2001 and 2004. I don't remember what year it was, but I do remember where I was at the time and where I was working at the time, and those were when I was in that building, so I know that that's during that period. Memphis sustained straight-line winds. The winds were in excess of 100 miles per hour. It was like a hurricane came through. And the area of Memphis that I lived in was without power for 2 weeks. This was in July. We had no air conditioning. We had no fans. A few people had generators, but not many. Our freezers thawed. All of the things that we're warned that could happen happened. We had a block party. I mean, what are you going to do with all your food? I didn't have a pressure canner where I couldn't go in and I couldn't can my meat that was in my freezer. Now, if I had a gas stove, so I would have been able to do it. I should have. I do now. But what we did is we grilled. We grilled our meat, and we had a block party. Our meat was going to spoil, so we made a party of it. Our block in our city block of Memphis had a block party, and we feasted, and we had a good old time. And then the meat was gone, then the food was gone, and we were eating out of our pantries. I do remember how miserable we were. We basically were living outside. We probably would have been more comfortable if we had set up tents in the backyard than trying to sleep inside, because we didn't have any airflow inside. It was miserable inside our houses because it was sweltering heat in the middle of the summer in the South. And the Southeast is notorious for heat and humidity, and it was really, really bad. And Danny King went through the same thing. He talks about what it was like when he lived. This is Deep South Homestead, if you're not familiar with Danny King. Talked about what it was like in his area when Katrina hit, and what happened to them being without power for the length of time that they were without power. And it was at least as long, and maybe longer, maybe 3 weeks or a month. I don't remember exactly how long Danny says they were without power, but they were without power for a long time. And other people have had the same kind of thing happen to them at different times of the year. Right now, this time of the year, if there have been power outages in the north, and people in these cold areas are having to heat themselves and keep themselves warm without power. And this is something that could happen to all of us. So I've lived through a minor power outage. 2 weeks is long enough. It was hot. It was miserable. Living in Memphis humidity and heat for 2 weeks in the middle of July with no air conditioning and no fans was horrendous. It was really, really awful. I don't wish that on anybody, and I lived through it, and I survived it. As it was, we still had water, because it was just the power grid. The water still was running. Those of us who had gas stoves were able to, gas water heaters, gas stoves were able to function. We could cook, we could heat water, we could shower. It could be a lot worse. The dog keeps moving the camera. I'm so sorry about that. Try to work on that. Well, I can't help the dog when he goes to sleep underneath the camera and then moves. Yeah, there was something that I read in here. I don't remember where I saw it. I'm going to have to read it again. But I did read, and I remember seeing it, that was talking about people who were already preparing, and that they were doing a good job and they should continue doing that, and other people should do what they're doing. And so basically what they're saying is that people who are preppers are doing what they should be doing. When I was a child, and I was a child during the 50s and 60s. I mean, I'm that age. We had what was it called? Civil defense. Has anybody ever heard of civil defense? And that's basically what that was. Now we have warning sirens. Small communities, or maybe even neighborhoods and cities, will have a siren that goes off if there's a weather emergency. But when I was a child, they were not called weather emergencies. They were called air raid warnings. An air raid warning. We were prepared to duck and run, basically, as children, to duck our heads and get under our desks, as if that would protect us from a disaster. That's not going to protect us from a disaster. If there were a tornado, maybe it would protect us from falling debris. Another thing that we had, like I mentioned, they were called air raid warnings. If airplanes flying over, an air raid, we were prepared for air raids. I'm sure they were just testing to be sure the siren still worked, but every Saturday at noon we could expect the air raid warning siren to go off. And I remember even as a child thinking, that would be the perfect time for somebody to actually attack us, to plan an attack to go off at noon on Saturday. So the air raid warnings would go off and nobody would pay any attention to it because it was just another air raid warning. That's sort of like the boy who cried wolf. Everybody remembers that story. The boy who cried wolf. Remember, every time he would warn the family, warn the neighborhood, warn the community that there was a wolf coming, there was a wolf coming. You needed to hide, you needed to prepare, you needed to get ready. There was a wolf coming. The wolf never came. Until finally the wolf did come, and the boy warned everybody that the wolf was coming, and nobody paid attention to him because he had warned them so many times that they didn't believe him anymore. Well, that's kind of like what this is. So we've been warned that we need to be ready. The government has warned us that we need to be prepared. Yeah, the government is telling us we need to be prepared. It's not saying that we should be prepared for 6 months without power, just that we should be prepared. We shouldn't be complacent. We shouldn't be even 72 hours worth of food and water and supplies isn't long enough. We all need to be prepared, and that's what this study is telling us, that we should be prepared. But it's not saying that an attack is imminent. It's not saying that the CIA, the FBI, that all of the government, all of the alphabet agencies have discovered an attack that is imminent, that we are getting ready to be attacked. That's not what this report says. It says that they've discovered that we are not prepared as a nation, as states, as local communities. We are not prepared, and we should be prepared. The whole country should be prepared just like we are for weather emergencies, and we're not. And that's what it's warning us to do. So let's do what they're telling us to do. Let's all be preppers. Is it so unreasonable to be prepared for 2 years? I'm not. I probably have six months worth of food in my freezer. I probably have 6 months worth of meat in my freezer because that's what I'm using my freezer for. I have canned vegetables and things, so I could survive for a while on my canned goods. I don't have anywhere near 6 months worth of food. And I need to work on that. I do have easily 6 months of meat. However, if there were a power outage, that 6 months of meat's going to thaw. But what I need to prepare right now, I need to be stocking up on jars. If you don't have a pressure canner, you should have one. You should learn how to pressure can. Because if you do have food in your freezer, you need to be able to can it. I'm depending on my freezer right now. And I can go easily. I could go for a month easily. I have plenty of food to survive for a month. I don't want to do an exercise seeing if I could because I don't want to use it up. I want to have that storage I want to be prepared if there was a real emergency. So here's an old lady telling you that I was afraid to say anything. I was afraid that just because I was reading something different in this report, I was wrong. I thought I was wrong. I thought I wasn't reading what I was supposed to be reading. And that other people were seeing something that I wasn't seeing, and I wasn't saying anything about it. And it took Canadian Prepper to come out and say, look, y'all. Well, he didn't say, look, y'all, he's Canadian. He didn't say that. But he did say that you guys in the United States need to pay attention and to download this report and to read the report. Pay attention. Don't listen to what somebody else is telling you to do. Make up your own mind. Use your brain. Make up your own mind. Read the report and come to your own decision what you need to be doing. And that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to do. I hope you do too. So bye, y'all. See you next time.